We now open the floor for questions. Please feel free to raise your hand and ask any question that you may have.
Thank you, sir. It was indeed in-depth analysis. It was almost a feeling that something terribly has gone wrong, but you settled this down emotionally as well as the statistically. So thank you so much for that. My question is, like, in Maharashtra politics, Maratha reservation was a big factor, which has played a very crucial part in Lok Sabha elections, but that seems to vanish out in assembly elections. So what could be the reason for that? To all the three panelists, thank you.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. So my question comes from more sentimentality point of view. When this MVA government happened back in 2019, the farmer question was on burning. ST questions, the Sampa, that question was on 4. During that period, this government, particular government was busy in forming coalitions for at least for a month. After that, when government came, there were a lot of projects that were suddenly came to halt. And for various reasons, of course, but perception that was that, and BJP used that perception also during its campaigning. Lastly, then came the unfortunate period of COVID-19. And during COVID-19, the CM, unfortunately, for trolled for the Facebook Live administration, and even the tagline, माझे कुटुंब माझी जबाबदारी. Now, even its neutral tagline, it might come off as, okay, you're on now. So are these perceptions somewhere stay in the people's mind and, come out? Because especially after Shinde came over, he went on the ground, he was very active. They marketed it very well that this person is going on the ground helping people, especially that particular incident where there was an accident and he personally called those victims and spoke to them. So does these things make difference? Thank you so much.
I too have a question. My question emphasizes on the importance of cultural organization which associates with a particular party. Like Rahul sir and Sanjay sir also noted that there was last minute mobilization from the Mahayuti side. And being from Nagpur, I have seen the cultural organization and I would not hesitate to take the name of RSS. They have mostly played a very vital role to play in the last minute mobilization. So the importance of cultural organization and the Mahavikas Agadi lacks in it. So that is my question.
मेरा प्रश्न संजय सर से रहेगा. सर आपने सर कई टीवी चैनलों में आपने ये बोला था कि महाविकास आघाड़ी या फिर महायुति जो है वोट परसेंटेज की अगर बात करें तो आपका भी ठीक ही था. 1-2% इधर उधर हुआ है सर. लेकिन सर लोगों को ये लग रहा था कि महायुति मतलब इतना सारा जो एडवांटेज जो मिला उसको सीट में वो नहीं आ सकता था. आपने कहा था सर कि बीजेपी का कुछ प्लानिंग था जो कि हम लोग उसको पकड़ नहीं पाए. वो प्लानिंग क्या था सर, मैं आपसे जानना चाह रहा हूँ.
सच बात, मुझे नहीं याद है कि मैंने कहीं ऐसा कहा कि बीजेपी का कोई प्लानिंग था. और अगर वो प्लानिंग हमें पता होता तो हमारा आकलन और बढ़िया होता. प्लानिंग शायद नहीं. मैं बार बार जिसको कह रहा हूँ, जिसका हिंट इसके पहले वाले सवाल में भी है, मोबिलाइजेशन वाला. मुझे लग रहा है माइक्रो मैनेजमेंट जो पॉइंट मैं मतलब अपनी टीम के साथ बात कर रहे हैं, खुद भी हम सोच रहे हैं, क्योंकि अभी पिछले 2-3 इलेक्शंस झारखंड में भी हमारा आकलन बिल्कुल सही नहीं है. महाराष्ट्र में भी आकलन ट्रेंड सही है लेकिन हम उसको नहीं मानते सही, हमारा आकलन सही नहीं है. हरियाणा में भी हमारा आकलन इतना सही नहीं है. तो ये जिसका कह रहे थे कि कल्चरल मोबिलाइजेशन जैसे आरएसएस काम कर रही है, हम सर्वे में क्या करते हैं? हम सर्वे में लोगों के पास जाते हैं, वी गो टू द पीपल, आस्क क्वेश्चंस. बट दिस माइक्रो मैनेजमेंट विच इज टेकिंग प्लेस एट द ग्राउंड लेवल, जो कह रहे हैं कि महाराष्ट्र में इसकी चर्चा हो रही है कि कितने सारे छोटी सभाएं की गई. सभा भी उसको कहना मुश्किल है. दीज आर नॉट बिग मीटिंग, दीज आर लाइक डोर टू डोर, यू आर मीटिंग फ्यू पीपल, डिस्कसिंग इश्यूज. हम ये कह रहे हैं सर्वे इसको नहीं पकड़ पा रहा है और पकड़ भी नहीं सकता है. जो छोटी सी चीज़ें हो रही है आपके, मान लीजिए आपके घर में सर्वे किया, वोटरों के घर में सर्वे किया, आपसे तो हम ये सवाल पूछ रहे हैं, किसको वोट देंगे, किसको मुख्यमंत्री के रूप में पसंद करें, दीज आर द क्वेश्चन विच वी आर आस्किंग. बट घर के अंदर में क्या चल रहा है, हम बारीकी से घर के परिवार के अंदर में वी वोंट बी एबल टू कैप्चर दैट. सो उसको मैं बार बार हिंट कर रहा था कि इट सीम्स देयर इज अ बिग रोल ऑफ माइक्रो मैनेजमेंट इन इलेक्शन. मैनेजिंग इलेक्शन नॉट इन अ नेगेटिव सेंस. वो कई बार हम कहते हैं ना, मैनेज कर लिया, यूनिवर्सिटी के अपॉइंटमेंट में उन्होंने मैनेज कर लिया और नौकरी हासिल कर ली, वो वाला मैनेजमेंट यहाँ नहीं कह रहा हूँ, उसको मैं नेगेटिव सेंस में कहता हूँ. लेकिन मैनेजिंग इलेक्शन इन अ पॉजिटिव सेंस, हाउ डू यू रीच आउट टू पीपल, हाउ डू यू send out your message to the people in a convincing manner. So door to door knock करके इस बात का मैं जिक्र कर रहा था. And that is connected to the previous question कि mobilization at the last minute. The data gives us a sense that there is a last minute not shift, last minute voting decision by a very large number of people. अब आई एम नॉट ट्राइंग टू जस्टिफाई कि हमारा सर्वे तो 2 दिन पहले खत्म हो गया था, इसी के लिए हमने ये लास्ट मिनट पकड़ा नहीं. आई वॉज यूजिंग दैट एन एक्सप्लेनेशन. क्या हुआ होगा, आई एम नॉट सेइंग कि उसी फैक्टर से हम वी वुड हैव कम वेरी क्लोज. तो ये लास्ट मिनट मोबिलाइजेशन का जो स्ट्रैटेजी है विच इज़ बीइंग एम्प्लॉयड बाय द बीजेपी, जो कहते हैं कि आखिरी बॉल तक मैच को छोड़ते नहीं है. लुक, इमेजिन हरियाणा में पूरा परसेप्शन बन गया था कि कांग्रेस जीत रही है, बट दे वर्क वेरी हार्ड ऑन द ग्राउंड. कांग्रेस उसी परसेप्शन के सहारे सोच रही थी हम चुनाव जीत रहे हैं, तो दे वर्क वेरी हार्ड ऑन द ग्राउंड. एंड दिस इज व्हाट आई डोंट थिंक सर्वेज आर एबल टू पिक अप. एंड someone who does surveys with a team, we need to sit back and think how best we can capture these issues. इसको कैसे हम कैप्चर करें, ये समझने की ज़रूरत है. आखिरी 1-2 और सवाल सुहास भाई के लिए और राहुल के लिए.
I would like to first go back to what Sanjay ji was telling just now. You know, the way electioneering has changed over time has meant that for those who do political consultancy or political analysis, etc., there is a challenge as to how to capture this new trend. Like there was a question about the perception that Eknath Shinde is active. That is a perception. And how that perception was created, construction of images, creating of brands, has changed electioneering so dramatically over the last 2 decades or so. And it's not just Modi who has done it. It started much earlier, but it has sort of concretized now. In view of that, we need to look at the instruments that are available to us, like this question about RSS. Yes, so many of us have heard about RSS and other affiliates working very hard on the ground. How do you quantify that as to what was their effect? We know that there was an effect. We know that there was an outreach. The question is to quantify it. And that is where currently at least, and I don't know what experiments in the survey method we can do, but what other kinds of studies can be done in order to really capture this tendency among the voters. Like Sanjay ji said, if 40% plus people are saying that we will decide or we have decided only at the last instance who to vote for, then no amount of earlier surveys is going to be very accurate in the future. Since Trump's victory in the US, first victory, it has been also noticed that there is a tendency among voters to first choose a party or candidate and then post facto justify that choice by giving you other answers in your questionnaire. As a result of which, the traditional explanatory variables in a survey tend to be actually dependent variables. If I have already decided for whatever reason that I want to vote for this party or candidate, then you will not be able to capture that. So these are the new tendencies that are happening in politics. And as students of politics, as those who want to do political analysis, we need to constantly search for better instruments to do that. That's one larger answer that I would offer. On the perception question, otherwise, I have no answer. Because in a sense, if I am pro Eknath Shinde, then my perception that Eknath Shinde is very active on the ground will obviously get augmented. If I am pro Uddhav Thackeray, then I would be more influenced by his suave Facebook contacts. So in a sense, it's a priori decision to be on this or that side that in a sense is consolidated by this perception building and image building in which various advertisement agencies actually earn a lot of money these days. On the agitations, two agitations were referred to. One is the Maratha agitation, and you will have noticed that it was practically switched off suddenly. And therefore, it will have to be very cynically, but at the same time, very practically looked at as to how an agitation and a leader can be quickly switched on and switched off. Is there a switch somewhere else? So I would say very frankly and honestly that don't take it at face value that Marathas suddenly became quiet overnight and then decided to vote for A party or B party. On the farmers' agitation earlier, however, there is a difference, which is that in Maharashtra, after Sharad Joshi's agricultural agitations or farmers' agitations, there has never been an agitation of the farmers that could bring together different strata or layers of the agriculturists of Maharashtra. Different crop producers together, different layers of landholders together, never since the 1990s. And therefore, such agitations that occurred on the eve of 2014, 19, etc., could easily be neutralized or got neutralized because of their inner weaknesses and didn't have much political traction. This is unlike the Northwest India kind of farmers' agitation that we have been witnessing over MSP. MSP and Northwest kind of Haryana, Punjab kind of agitation is very different qualitatively from what we can have in Maharashtra or we have in Maharashtra today.
Just to add a couple of things. I think one, I had this line on my presentation which was actually out of frustration, which is that it seemed everything went right for Mahayuti and everything went wrong for Mahavikas Aghadi. And that line was out of frustration because what we are doing in election political analysis is retrofitting of a fact. Once the Mahayuti won, then everything seemed right. And why it is happening is that everyone is obsessed with predicting elections, right? From journalists to students to political analysts, we all want to know who is winning how many seats. And someone who has done a little bit of statistics, I'm going to tell you this very clearly. Even when you get it right, you got it by fluke, right? So the problem is that, see, RSS mobilized. But did we know this during the campaign? So why were journalists on the ground not writing about RSS mobilization, right? Or whether this Maratha agitation is getting switched on. I think where as an analyst we are getting failed is by the kind of reportage that should be happening from the ground. For us to be able to get a greater sense of what's happening on the ground, that also helps us in designing the questionnaire for survey. When I was working at Lokniti in 2009, I remember we never had web Pesara newspapers. We used to create files for all states कि वहाँ पे क्या election reporting हो रही है. And then we used to, when questionnaire used to get designed, we used to have discussion, okay, these are the things that are getting reported from the ground and this is how our questionnaires should be designed. What you are going to get in a survey is dependent on what you are asking. And you are only going to ask when you know what should be asked, right? But if our obsession is going to be just by predicting elections, whether we got something right, something wrong, then we are in a problem. We need to understand elections as part of a larger political process. And sometimes, because there are millions of minds working, they are always going to stun and surprise us. That's what the fun of studying elections is. And unless we move away, I think what is not happening in the realm of election studies is basically those who do ethnography, ground reporting and surveys, exchange of ideas.
Sir, my question is regarding NCP Ajit Pawar faction. Like before elections, everyone are underestimating the faction per se. They were able to make 37 seats mark. And do you think is it Mahayuti's campaigning which gained them seats, or their strategy per se made them gain seats? In one seat, they were able to get around 1 lakh difference compared to other candidate, and they were also able to make some differences in the election. So what is?
See, I think it's okay. I'm sorry. So my answer would be I don't have an answer to this. And again, we are getting into on a wrong tree. The reason is this. Ajit Pawar was seen as a weak candidate because of his performance in 20 Lok Sabha, right? His party got just 3.6% vote share. Now, what did he do between, say, June and now? I don't know. I don't read Marathi, so I don't know what was he doing. It could also be a simple fact that in a cricket match, when top order performs, even tailenders hit the ball for 6, right? Because BJP's strike rate is 80-85%, Shiv Sena's strike rate is 80%, NCP is also going to do well, right? Last time, look at what happened in Lok Sabha. All three MVA parties performed. All three Mahayuti parties didn't perform. This time, it's reverse. So I don't know whether there is anything grand that NCP Ajit Pawar did. Rather, I think what is happening, and I don't have an explanation, but if I look at elections from November 2023 to now, one trend is very clear. Whichever party was thought of being ahead in the election, lost. In Chhattisgarh 2023, everyone was thinking Congress will come back. In Madhya Pradesh, everyone was thinking Congress will give a tough fight to BJP. BJP got maximum seats. In Lok Sabha, everyone was thinking BJP is going to do well. BJP got a setback. In Haryana, everyone was thinking Congress will do well. Congress got a setback. In Jharkhand, everyone was thinking BJP. I think what seems to be happening, that parties that are little ahead in the game, they think they are too much ahead in the game. And then they are making much more mistakes compared to parties that were on the back foot. I think they are doing a little bit more preparation to be back in the game. I think it's just this. No grand planning, no grand strategy. Choti cheezein, they got it right. And when you get many choti things right, it leads to a big victory. And when you make lots of small mistakes, it's lead to a big sort of like a mistake. Is that okay?
So regarding Ajit Pawar, the perception was not so wrong because not only that he did not perform well in Lok Sabha, but after Lok Sabha, when this Ladki Bahin scheme was launched, the general perception was that Eknath Shinde was getting more advantage of it, and his popularity was on the rise. And surveys after surveys, Ajit Pawar's popularity was not rising. All the surveys. So he was at the bottom of 3%, 5% or so. He also had his yatra during this period and all the reportage in the regional papers, I could certainly say it with confirmation that there was a lackluster response to his yatra. It was not overwhelming compared to the response that Sharad Pawar was getting when he was touring the state between Lok Sabha and Vidhan Sabha election. But still, what could have gone in favor of Ajit Pawar perhaps was NCP, as it always was considered as a party of regional satraps, that there are assembly level leaders who could win election on their own if they could get some help from here and there. And all those regional leaders, for example, Hassan Mushrif in Kolhapur, Chhagan Bhujbal in Eula, and such kind of leaders, all of them switched to Ajit Pawar. And they had their own stakes, they had their own machinery, and even if they would have contested from some other party or independents, they would have still got very significant number of votes. Now add BJP votes to these votes of these NCP candidates, Ajit Pawar's candidate, and there you get a winning number. Also, another thing that Ajit Pawar did very consciously, and it was also reported in bits and pieces, was he managed the minority votes in the constituencies where he fielded the candidates very consciously. He was addressing to minorities in his rallies. He was telling them the work that their candidates have been done. Also telling them that आप आखिरी वक्त बोल दोगे फतवा आ गया, वो इस बार नहीं चलेगा. You have to vote for our party. So he was doing this very consciously, learning from the Lok Sabha election, because in Lok Sabha he didn't get the minority vote. So I think all these factors ultimately helped Ajit Pawar's party. And one narrative that the party activists were convinced about, Ajit Pawar's supporters and Eknath Shinde's supporters, they were highly convinced about was that the reason for which they switched the side, particularly Ajit Pawar faction switched the side to get local funds. That narrative had gone down very well on the ground. The candidate was convinced, their supporters, their activists were convinced, their voters were also convinced that in last 1.5 years, 2 years, Ajit Pawar's MLAs had got lot of funds at the constituency level for development. Something that MVA could not counter. If we listen to Eknath Shinde's speeches, Ajit Pawar's speeches, Devendra Fadnavis' speeches, in whatever constituency they went, they just throw the numbers for that particular constituency, not for the entire state, for the state also, but for that particular constituency also, they throw the numbers in hundreds and thousand crores. कि इसके लिए इतना फंड आया, उसके लिए उतना फंड आया. I think that particular narrative very consciously they ran, and that became quite successful at the ground level. And that's the reason for Ajit Pawar's success and Eknath Shinde's success.
सर मेरा क्वेश्चन रोल ऑफ सोशल मीडिया के रिगार्डिंग, जैसे कि सोशल मीडिया हो या फिर प्रिंट मीडिया हो. जैसे कि जो 20 तारीख के बराबर एक दिन पहले इंडियन एक्सप्रेस के फ्रंट पेज पे एक न्यूज़ आई थी, लाइक एक जो पॉलिटिकली कैंपेन के लिए बनाई थी. पूरे मतलब जितने भी कोविड के 2.5 साल में या फिर कोविड के पीरियड में जितने भी कुछ कटआउट्स थे प्रिंट के, उसको कोलैज करके बीजेपी महायुति ने उसको यूज़ किया, और उसमें कितने प्रॉब्लम्स ये हुआ, घोटाले उनको उन्होंने दिखाया था. तो ऐसे ही अगर हम कंपैरेटिव एनालिसिस करें महायुति और महाविकास आघाड़ी के जो कैंपेनिंग के जो न्यूज़ थे, तो उसमें और सोशल मीडिया पे भी रील्स भी बनाए थे उस दोनों इन्होंने, मतलब दोनों फैक्शंस ने. तो उसमें अगर देखा जाए तो महायुति के जितने भी न्यूज़ थे या फिर रील्स थे, उसमें कुछ पॉजिटिव या फिर डेवलपमेंटल लेवल के उन्होंने पोर्ट्रे किया. लेकिन अदर साइड पे महाविकास आघाड़ी ने थोड़ा क्रिटिकल, मतलब हम क्या करेंगे उससे बढ़िया क्या गलत हुआ, या फिर ये ऐसा कर रहे हैं, इधर जा रहा है, तो थोड़ा उन्होंने वो के इसलिए कुछ प्रॉब्लम हुआ, उनको वोट कम मिले, ऐसा हुआ है. या फिर और एक मुझे पूछना था कि जैसे कि जितने भी न्यूज़ है, सॉरी अपना जो न्यूज़पेपर्स है, उसमें पूरा 2-3 दिन पहले पूरे आधा का आधा न्यूज़पेपर मतलब एडवर्टाइजमेंट में थे, मतलब पूरे पहले 4-5 पेज पूरा एडवर्टाइजमेंट था, और उसमें से बहुत कम मार्जिन महाविकास आघाड़ी के लोगों को मिला वहाँ पर, मतलब बहुत छोटा मिलता था कटआउट, या फिर पिछले पेज पे मिलता था. तो पहले 3-4 पेज पूरा महायुति को मिलता था. तो ऐसे सोशल मीडिया का रोल रहा है क्या इसमें? तो वही कि ये जो पूरा है, तो इससे नैरेटिव सक्सेस हुआ उनका.
Sir, my question is a very general level, and it goes beyond Maharashtra. So now we are, as a women, witnessing lots of women-oriented welfare scheme across the states, whether it's MP and Maharashtra as well. So my question goes like, will the politics of freebies will ever be translated into politics of representation? Or more, if you go beyond that, sociology of representation for women?
So my question is for Dr. Parshikar. Most of the political analysts or most of the surveys predicted that SS, UBT, like Shiv Sena, UBT and Congress might have a downfall or might not perform that well. But no one predicted that NCP, SP would perform so badly. So what do you think are the factors? Why, what impacted their performance?
Sir, my question was to your answer that ground level reporting could not catch the psychology of people. Suhas sir might know Bhautor Sekar, I have heard him. So in 2019 elections, he noted that there was one conference or a meeting where Shekhar Gupta and Yogendra Yadav were sitting, and they were saying that आम्हाला दिसत होतं पण आम्ही बघायला तयार नव्हतं. मतलब हमको दिखता था पर हम देखने के लिए तैयार नहीं थे. सो द नैरेटिव ऑफ मीडिया डज इट अफेक्ट द सर्वे?
What happened exactly in Maharashtra वो दिखा नहीं, लास्ट मोमेंट तक नहीं दिखा, कहीं भी नहीं दिखा. इट इज़ नॉट अबाउट द सर्वे, इट इज़ अबाउट द पॉलिटिकल कंसल्टेंसी सर्वे. तो व्हाट वाज द एग्जैक्ट रीजन कि वो दिखा नहीं, जब आया तब बूम हुआ. द लास्ट क्वेश्चन टू संजय सर, 47% पीपल डिसाइड कि वोट किसको करना है आफ्टर कैंपेन. ओके, तो क्या इसका रीज़न फ्री बीज है या व्हाट वाज द एग्जैक्ट रीज़न, क्योंकि इट इज़ द फर्स्ट टाइम जितना इंक्रीज डे टू बाय डे हर इलेक्शन हो रहा है. या
लास्ट क्वेश्चन से हम शुरू करते हैं कि व्हाट मे हैव बीन द रीजन व्हाई 47% पीपल were late deciders, and I kept mentioning, and I mentioned it couple of times, that this was very unusual. We have not seen this happening in Maharashtra earlier, and not even in other state. I think one explanation I give, because there were alliance partner. A voter may be willing to, a supporter of, a very strong supporter of one party, but he or she does not like the candidate of the party which is contesting in his or her constituency as an alliance partner. Just to give an example, someone is a Sharad Pawar supporter, strong supporter, but in his or her constituency, Sharad Pawar party is not contesting, it is Congress which is contesting, or Shiv Sena which is contesting. So this kept a lot of people guessing, waiting in order to figure out whether I should vote for the alliance partner or not, because I have never liked Shiv Sena. Just to give an example, I have never liked Shiv Sena, or I have never liked Congress. That may be one factor. Second, lot of shifting of people, like candidates from one party to another. यहाँ से वहाँ जा रहे हैं. Lot of independents in the fray. I wanted this man to be given ticket by the party, but this man has not been given ticket. He is contesting as an independent. As I mentioned, more than 8,000 candidates were in the fray in the Maharashtra Assembly election. I will have to look at the number of parties, but parties must be also in several hundreds. Must be 200 parties have contested elections in Maharashtra. So all this has, and maybe freebies, last minute things coming to your place, maybe I'm not. So these may be the few factors which has contributed to a large number of people making decisions on the last minute. और जो आपने कहा कि पॉलिटिकल कंसल्टेंट्स को भी नहीं दिखा कि जो हुआ वो दिख नहीं रहा था. I always keep a distance from these kind of a narrative कि नहीं, because all these narratives finally enters into one domain कि मतलब वो EVM, administration, etc. etc. I don't tend to buy those arguments. मुझे लगता है कि देखने में गलती हुई, methods में गलती हुई होगी. ऐसा तो नहीं हो सकता कि मतलब ये EVMs और उसके बदौलत इस तरह का मैंडेट नहीं आता है. कोई सवाल था कि how does this whole perception, the media was not able to reportage, what is the relationship of reportage with the survey? What Rahul was trying to say is that when we try and design the questionnaire, we have something in our mind. What do we want to, we anticipate that if Mahayuti wins election, what kind of an explanation people would be looking for. So we design questions like that. If Mahavikas Aghadi is going to win election, so what kind of an explanation? So we keep, like, we have been asking a question over a period of time now. if Modi was not the prime ministerial candidate, would you have still voted for BJP? Because we anticipate that this is an issue on which we want to do the analysis. What extent Modi is a vote puller for BJP? So we anticipate question, we think of the issues which could be explanatory variables after the verdict. तो अगर मीडिया में ये दिख नहीं रहा, ये हो रहा है कि it's a tight election, tight election, tight election. Nobody is reporting it may be a big sweep for Mahayuti. We are unable to even think of a question which could be an explanatory variable for this kind of a anticipated victory. So that's the relationship. I'm not blaming कि अच्छा मीडिया ने नहीं बताया इसलिए हमने सर्वे नहीं में नहीं पूछा, बट शायद कहीं कोई मिसिंग लिंक है, वो देखने की ज़रूरत है. मीडिया सोशल मीडिया पे मैं half a minute I will spend. My personal belief, and based on some evidences, not big evidences, is that social media does not influence the voting decision to a great extent. Very little influence. Social media is a echo chamber. People watch those platforms which you, so it reinforces, only it makes your own supporters aggressive, active to vote for your own party, and it does not have the power to shift voters away from different alliance to your side. Why? Because you would figure out that hardly people watch those platforms which they don't like. If there are Modi supporters, they keep watching those platforms which keep appreciating Modi. They would not watch the other side. Same is the case with other side, and they feel very happy about, अच्छा मोदी अपोनेंट मतलब मोदी जी की तो उन्होंने आज अच्छी धुलाई कर दी या मोदी की खूब प्रेज की. So my own sense is that social media is not a big influencer. I think there is a huge overstatement that social media is changing elections. That's my sense of how media is taking media's role in Indian elections.
सो मैं एक दो चीज पहला ना, कभी आपका जो सवाल था ना, इट गोज बैक टू द सेम थिंग कि ग्राउंड पे दिखना चाहिए कौन जीत रहा है. नहीं दिखता है. जो चीज़ भविष्य में होने वाली है वो आपको पहले नहीं दिख सकती है. अगर पहले दिख रही होती तो सब लोग शेयर मार्केट में अच्छे पैसे लगा के अच्छे पैसे बना रहे हैं, राइट. और स्पेशली सोचो जब 2-3 दिन 4 दिन पहले इलेक्शन में मान लो 47% लोग लास्ट मिनट नहीं, वो 30% ही है. बट अगर 1/3 वोटर क्लियर ही नहीं है वो किसको वोट देने वाला है, you will not be able to figure out who's going to win. And this is what I'm saying. The tendency to basically on the ground to figure out who's winning, rather than giving us details of what is being discussed, what are the issues. और एक चीज सुहास जी ने जो थोड़ी देर पहले भी बोली थी, which is very important, is people who have already made up a mind who they are voting for. They talk of issues very differently compared to people who are still undecisive. And what, as a sort of like person who does numbers, is looking for more stories on that. I'm not looking for कि हम देखना नहीं चाहते थे या हमारे ideological चीजें, वो सब तो हमेशा होता है election में. People have some preconceived bias when they go on the ground. Those things are always going to be there. But as journalists, as reporters, the idea is if there are more details, that would be very important. Second, incumbents winning election is harder to figure out. And I'll give you a logic. बिकॉज हमारे यहाँ इनकम्बेंट्स कोई बहुत अच्छा तो परफॉर्म कर नहीं रहे होते हैं, पर फिर भी उन्हें लोग वोट देते हैं. अब अगर वो बोलेगा हम इसी पार्टी को वोट करें, तो आप बोलेंगे कि महंगाई बढ़ गई, अनएम्प्लॉयमेंट है, फिर भी उसे वोट दे रहे हो, तो आपके साथ डिबेट में नहीं फंसना चाहता. इसीलिए इलेक्शंस में इफ इनकम्बेंट्स आर कमिंग बैक टू पार विद 2-3% पॉइंट स्विंग, इट्स हार्डर टू पिक दैट. सो व्हाट आई एम अर्जिंग is not to go on the ground and trying to figure out who's winning the election. It's a dubious exercise. Don't do. The second point is
मार्केट में बिकता है ना वो, इसी के लिए वैसा प्रोडक्ट बनाया जाता है.
like as if you want to be serious researcher, think of politics in a long historical terrain, why things are happening the way they are happening, something which Suhas ji talked about. Think of like what is it about Maratha Kumbis that they came together, what are the reasons that they are coming together. ये सब चीजें पकड़ने की जरूरत है. That's what we as researchers should be doing. On social media, just to sort of like add to Sanjay ji's point, see, ये positive, negative also is dependent on which party you are. If you are an opposition party, you will talk negative things. If you are a incumbent party, you have to talk about positive things. What has changed on social media in 2024 election, that now the opposition has become sort of like, it was very weak in comparison to BJP pre-24. Now it is, if not as strong, they have picked up. They are getting similar kind of hits, retweets, likes, and all those kind of things. I think what also has happened, opposition has also learned the game of disinformation and misinformation, right? So earlier they were back on the back foot on this, now they are on equal. But equal footing is not going to, like as Sanjay said, social media alone is not going to win or lose you election. It's another medium and instrument to create narratives around you.
Thank you. I think one of the toughest question is about why the NCP Sharad Pawar didn't fare well. One part of that answer has already been given by Rahul earlier, namely that it's a question of how a particular coalition is doing, and then accordingly you have performance of the different players in that coalition. But also look at both these parties, Shiv Sena and the NCP. When they split, most of their sitting MLAs and therefore most of their more key players actually went away from the original party to the new party. As a result of that, the strength of NCP, which is what he was earlier pointing out as local leaders, was less with Sharad Pawar and more with Ajit Pawar. Now you may ask, why didn't it then work in the Lok Sabha election? That is because again you look at the strength of those leaders who went, they have local strength and therefore they waited for the assembly rather than hit back at the time of the Lok Sabha. So that is an important answer that we need to keep in mind, that both the parties that split 2.5 years ago had actually taken a lot of blood away to the breakaway faction, or the now original faction, you may call it, the real faction, the real Shiv Sena and the real NCP. And the strength of NCP being in the local leaders, it hit hard as far as Sharad Pawar's party is concerned. The question which we can't have enough information on and quantification about is the question of transfer of votes as well. But as has been already noted, the coordination within the MVA being very weak in assembly compared to the Lok Sabha, it is possible to hypothesize that therefore the transfer of votes which didn't happen among the Mahayuti partners in Lok Sabha, similarly didn't happen for MVA this time, and the vice versa for Mahayuti, that transfer of vote must have happened handsomely this time around. But this is something which cannot be easily captured or quantified in an empirical manner. I think other questions have already been taken care of, except perhaps the question about freebies and representation. I think if you split these two parts, then it might be better to understand what is happening, because all parties are in for various kinds of subsidies, benefits, and cash transfers. I will not call them freebies because that is a kind of patronizing and wrong word, but they are welfare schemes. One may have differences of opinion about what kind of policies a government should have, but all governments in the country, right from the Manrega age, that is to say 2009, a little before 2009, so 15 years now, I think a consensus is emerging among our political parties that some kind of a relief of an immediate nature is necessary for our electorate, because our politics and our governments are simply bankrupt as far as imagination is concerned. Politicians know that they can't improve the life of people in a durable manner, so they go for these limited measures. Nevertheless, this has now been accepted. So all parties will do it, as they have been doing it in Tamil Nadu, which has been called earlier as competitive populism in Tamil Nadu, which was then done very dramatically by N.T. Ramarao in Andhra Pradesh, 2 rupees per kilogram rice, has now been institutionalized in our country. And therefore, it will be neutralized soon. Because in any case, your party is doing the same thing, my party is doing the same thing, his party is doing the same thing, and therefore, this will then become a kind of level playing field. The question then will be who performs better as far as delivery. And that will be possible only when I have experience of both parties or three parties, and then I can say that, okay, this party does it better than some other party. Coming to the second part of your question, I think you had in mind women's representation and this Ladli Bahena. Ladli Bahena, as the title itself suggests, doesn't like equality of women. Women are sisters. Brothers have to look after them. So philosophically, whether it is in Madhya Pradesh, whether it is this Maiya scheme in Jharkhand, Maiya Samman in Jharkhand, whether it is Ladki Bahin in Maharashtra. So I am not criticizing any party. All parties believe that women are an instrument of getting votes, full stop. Nothing beyond that. So don't expect anything from them. Even look at the conceit with which they passed the women reservation bill. That they made sure that women will probably not get reservation for another 2 decades. So our politics, however democratic it might be and we should be proud of it, etc., is also fundamentally asymmetrical or unequal. Dalits, Adivasis, women and Muslim are the 4 sections which are never going to get enough justice unless political parties decide to do that and unless there is an agreement among them. Women, since they constitute 50%, are probably likely to get at least numeric mirror representation. Not real representation, not in terms of real budgets. We are happy with if you have a social, what is it called? Social welfare ministry and a separate budget is given to that. We are happy. Ground level, resources of Adivasis will be women and child development. Ground level, resources of Adivasis will be taken away by all political parties. Ground level, all political parties will be hesitant to protect minorities very openly and firmly. Ground level, no parties will speak about atrocities against Dalits. So, while there is a democratic nature to our politics that elections have imposed, the same electoral politics structurally has made sure that real asymmetry of power will be very difficult to breach. And therefore, this women's representation question should be understood in conjunction with all other distortions in our representation, not just women. But anyway, that's another debate, so we can stop here.
Thank you so much, sir. Please give him a huge round of applause.